Chick-fil-A is my favorite fast food restaurant, not only because of the quality of the food, but even more important, the quality of the people. I mean, it's all the same when you go in. It's a good feeling to go in, and when you come out, sometimes I'd be out and not know where I want to go for lunch, and not sure that I really want a Chick-fil-A sandwich. But then, since I wasn't sure, I'll always go to Chick-fil-A because I'll come out feeling good, because the people make you feel good. And they treat you with dignity and respect and give you that special feeling. If there's any one thing that I could advise young people, and as I look out, I am talking to young people. I'm trying to look to my right and see if I can find any. Maybe in the back, yeah, some people. I'll relate to you. But to your young people, I think about what a fellow named Dean Rusk, who was Secretary of State under two presidents, John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Baines Johnson. Dean Rusk said to prepare yourself to be lucky, to prepare yourself to take advantage of opportunities by establishing a good work ethics of excellence and also a reputation of excellence, regardless of what the job is. Some of them can be kind of drudgery, but if you establish that, it's amazing how lucky you get. And as I look back on it now, I didn't know all of this, but it maybe helped me to be able to stay employed. I think maybe in this modern day is the best way to put it, because it's getting more difficult, particularly in the profession of coaching, to stay employed, though they do pay them a heck of a salary in this day and time. So even if you lose your job, like my son, he's going to be all right for 2 or 3 years. I mean, he made more money in 3 years than I made in 25 of coaching. I still have my first contract. I do. It's a 1-page, 3-paragraph, party of the first part. My base salary was $12,000. I had a subsistence of $2,500, and then I negotiated my own television show, old CNS Bank, on a statewide basis, and I had to appear before a marketing group about this size, convincing them of how important this is, and they agreed to take me on a 1-year trial, $100 a show, 10 shows, $1,000. So my total package was $15,500. And somebody said that's just about what you were worth when you came. And if you listen to what I'm going to tell you, you'll see that's just about what I was worth, because here's the situation. And I had a game plan of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a head coach. But I went back to Auburn, which is where I had gotten my degree. I went in the Marine Corps for 2 years. I'm very proud of that, Semper Fi, and went back. And my plan was to leave Auburn and go and serve under one of two coaches, a fellow named Del Royal from Texas. You don't even recognize Del Royal. Frank Broyles from Arkansas. That's two. They were great coaches. I wanted to serve under them, and then when Coach Jordan retired, they'd call me back. That was my plan. But you never know when you're thrown into a leadership role, and if you are prepared to be lucky, that could happen. And here's the situation at Georgia. Before most of you were born, Georgia had 7 losing seasons in 9 years. Georgia lost to Georgia Tech 8 straight years, which is a feast for anybody from Georgia Tech. And I know there must be somebody here from Georgia. Oh, y'all, you weren't even born then, I don't, but oh, it was a feast, but a famine for Georgia. But one of the great things about when a famine is over is a heck of a celebration. I'll give you a case in point. Georgia has 4 retired jerseys. First one is a guy you've never heard of. His name is Frank Sinkwich, and he won the Heisman Trophy. Another one you haven't ever heard of is Charlie Trippey, who may be the best all-around player that ever played. Another one you may have heard of, Herschel Walker. Most people have heard of Herschel. He won the Heisman. And the fourth one is Theron Sapp. Now, Theron Sapp ran 1 yard for a touchdown to beat Georgia Tech and break the drought, and they got so excited they retired his jersey. See? So that's what I mean by getting excited over something and when it happens. So anyway, they hired an athletic director, said, look, he's going to run the program, and he's going to go hire the coach. And everybody got real excited because he announced the new coach is Vince. Everybody was thinking Vince Lombardi. Well, they announced the new coach is Vince Dooley. The more candid Georgia people said, who in the heck is Vince Dooley? Well, here's my credentials. I was 31 years old. I was the freshman coach at a rival school. Now, as an athletic director, administrator, which I was, there is no way I would have hired myself. But the beauty of youth is I didn't know any different. In fact, my wife and I look back on it now and realize we're the only two that thought it was a good hire. But you don't know any difference, and that is the beauty of youth, because you go about establishing credibility, and the way you establish credibility in coaching is to win some games. And fortunately, we did. We were able to win some games early, won a couple of championships, and it gave me some credibility to start with. But you have to constantly earn that credibility and be able to survive some crises, because you're going to go through a series of crises, particularly in coaching or whatever it may be. There's going to be some tough times. To be able to step back, analyze the situation, and to be able to find a way to address that particular crisis, which I was able to do. And fortunately, was able to be the same place for 40 years, which is difficult in this day and time. I was 25 years as an athletic director, 25 years as a coach, and right away, some of the mathematicians out there will say, that's 50 years. You said you were there 40 years. Well, actually, I did both jobs for 10 years, didn't know I had two jobs till I gave up one, and the other one was a job. But people have often asked me, what is the difference, or what is the similarity between being a football coach and being an administrator? Well, two words, decision-making. You make decisions as an athletic director, you make them as a coach. The difference is the amount of time you have to make them. Now, as an administrator, if I was going to make a decision, I'd appoint a committee and study it for a while and then come give me a recommendation, and I'd think about it for a while. As a football coach, sometimes you got about 2 or 3 seconds to make a decision. That was never brought home to me any more than we used to play Clemson. We're going to open with Clemson this year for you Bulldog fans. Is any Clemson Tigers here? Y'all are pretty restricted as to, listen, no, not much orange here. So anyway, we had some great games with Clemson in those days. And so this particular game, we were leading. Everything was going good, and Clemson punted the ball. And the ball started rolling to the goal line, and the official, who has the greatest eyesight of any official I've ever known, ruled that that ball died on the 1/2 inch line. Amazing eyesight to be able to see that. See? So that, of course, excited the crowd and excited the Clemson team, and I knew we had to get this momentum back. So I had a little quarterback named James Jackson. I thought I'd sprint him out on the corner and get a first down and get the momentum back. Their cornerback makes a great play, tackles him for a safety, and that's like pouring fuel on the fire. We had to punt. They came down on the last play. They kicked a field goal and beat us. Now, the following Monday, I was having breakfast with then President Henry King Stanford, just a wonderful person. And we talked, and then I had to excuse myself because we had to go get ready for the next game. And before I left, he said, "Oh, Vince," he said, "I wanted to mention that if I'd have been you, I don't think I'd have called the quarterback sprint out on the 1-inch line. And I said, no, sir. Yes, sir. And if I'd have had 3 days to think about it, I wouldn't have called it either. So it shows you the amount of time that you have, see, to make those decisions as opposed to being an administrator. Well, the next thing, I guess, that helped me along the way is to know the person, or at least in my mind, the person that I wanted to spend my life with, a partner. I wanted somebody that shared my faith and somebody that shared it even better than I shared it, because I didn't want one that shared it less than what I did. And then I wanted somebody to maybe be a contrast to my personality. I'm actually a little shy and not outgoing, so I wanted somebody that wouldn't mind saying what they thought. Of course, I never quite bargained that I would get one that would have no filter of any thought. But nevertheless, I ended up marrying the person that I wanted to marry, that I loved and had those qualities. And we've had, as was mentioned, 50 happy years together, which isn't bad out of 53. Yeah, see, every year is not going to be the greatest in a long relationship. You'll have to adjust from time to time as you go along, as you grow along and you mature. So 50 out of 53 really happy years is not bad. See, we're working on 54, and she still tells me it's day to day. Lets me know. But I think the thing that enabled us to do so well is we do believe in some basic things. We both believe in discipline, but again, not in the same way. But we would never question each other in front of the children if one was administering discipline to the children. I mean, I used to catch hell in the bed later at night for something I might have done, but she wouldn't say anything in front of the children, you know. And then we both believed in prayer, and still do, very strongly, but in a different way. When I was coaching, we prayed as a team, asking God to help us to do the best we could do. And I've always thought if the rest would take care of itself. But she never believed in that. She believed in praying to win. She thought somebody on the other side was praying to win. She wanted to trump that, at least. But I guess the best example, we played Notre Dame in New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl for the national championship. Well, the night before the game, they had this marvelous reception for the officials of Georgia and Notre Dame. So we walked in, and right away, Barbara spotted Father Hesburgh. Now, he was the very distinguished president of Notre Dame, a great academician known nationally and internationally. And right away, I could tell Barbara had a thought. And before I could say anything, there's no filtering to that thought. She had gone up, introduced herself to Father Hesburgh, and then said, well, Father, I know that you and your network throughout the country will be praying tomorrow for victory for old Notre Dame. You know, Father Hesburgh, very distinguished, said, well, Barbara, my God doesn't have time for football games. And Barbara said, well, that's good because mine does. And unfortunately, it might happen. Well, I think of Barbara, and I think of the fact that as I was mentioning, wanted to find this person. I had finished the school and finished the Marine Corps, came back, and I became the faculty chair or the faculty advisor to the Newman Club, which was a student church group club. And I remember looking out of all of the students, and I picked out Barbara, who was a freshman, thinking she needed more advice and counseling than all the other students. She still hasn't taken my advice or counseling, I might add, but finally, 4 years later, we ended up marrying. 4 children. And she often says, our first one was Deanna Dooley, and the second one was Daniel Dooley, and the third one was Denise Dooley, and the fourth one was Derek Dooley, and the fifth one is going to be, damn it, Dooley. And she said, but we had, we got 11 grandchildren. We got a football team. But Mr. Cathy has a football team plus a sub. He's got 12. But he also has another generation of reserves. He's got 11 great-grandchildren and something like 150 adopted children. I mean, and he could have 10 teams from that and have a Cathy conference, if you could think about all the ones that he has. I mentioned to you about preparing yourself to be lucky. And it is true. It is amazing how lucky you can get when that preparation meets opportunity. I remember Roger Staubach. Anybody ever heard? The group in the back. I can count on them. And the coach here, the minister here, the businessman, the Tennessee man. Can remember some of these. But Roger Staubach was a Heisman Trophy winner at Navy, Dallas Cowboy quarterback. I don't know how many Super Bowls they won, but he used to always say it takes a lot of spectacular, or unspectacular is a better word, unspectacular preparation, because the preparation is not very spectacular. But it takes the unspectacular preparation to get spectacular results. And I think that's true. The NCAA has a program called the Honors Banquet, where they honor, it's now the top 10. It used to be the top 5, and they kept increasing it as we have more sports. And those are the exceptional student athletes. I mean, when you say exceptional, they really are exceptional when you get to the top 10. And then at the same time, they honor what they call the Silver Anniversary Award winners. These are the people that at one time were those top 10 who 25 years later went out in some particular field, in different fields, and done well. Fran Tarkenton from Georgia is one that was a Silver Anniversary winner. We have a fellow named Tommy Lyons that was an All-American center for me that became a pioneer in laser surgery, and he was a winner. But the winner this particular time, or the spokesperson, was a guy named David Bing. Nobody's ever heard of David Bing. David Bing was an All-American at Syracuse basketball player. He was a great pro basketball player. He went to Chicago and started a business, highly successful in the city of Chicago. And today, he's the mayor of Detroit. You're talking about taking on a challenge. But he was the spokesperson, and he got up, and I was really anxious to hear what he had to say of what made him successful. And it was sort of interesting because it was so simple, but yet it was substance. He said, behind my desk, I have a plaque that I call the 5 Ps that my old high school coach used to say all the time. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. Real simple statement, but one that still resonates with me today. So when that preparation meets the opportunity, it's amazing how lucky you can get. Now, that is the case about 90% of the times. But in about 10% of the times, sometimes it just falls out of heaven. And you say, thanks, because maybe you didn't really prepare for it. It was a gift from heaven. We used to play Kentucky up in Lexington at night, and it was always a challenge. And this was a real challenge this night because we were down 16-0. We couldn't do anything. Finally got a break in the fourth quarter, made it 16-7, got the ball back, made it 16-14, stopped Kentucky, got the ball back, with about 2 minutes and 45 seconds left and started a drive from our own 10. And we had an announcer named Larry Munson, the late Larry Munson, wonderful, we miss him. And he started counting down. 245 seconds, 244 seconds. Boy, I'm glad I didn't have to listen to him when I was coaching. It driven me crazy. We go all the way down the field to the 12-yard line. With 3 seconds left, I called timeout. I sent my kicker in, Rex Robinson, out of Marietta, to kick the field goal that's going to give us the victory, 17-16. Well, when we broke the huddle, I knew we were in trouble. Our right tackle was missing. We only had 10 men on the field, which means our corner's short and they're going to block the kick. Or if they don't block it, it means we missed it. And even if we made it, they'll penalize us for not having enough people on the line of scrimmage. So in all of this excitement of this dramatic drive, at that moment, standing next to me was my right tackle, Timmy Morrison. He was just standing there. So I looked up at him and massaged his neck. And I said, Timmy, what are you doing? Well, I've been coaching about 18 years now. I mean, I heard all of it. But I wasn't ready for what he said. He looked down, he said, Coach, I'm praying. He got so caught up in the emotions of this drive at that moment, he forgot what he was supposed to do, and he was just praying. So I said, well, Timmy, I want you to know that Coach Fran Kersey, now he was the coach at Kentucky, Coach Fran Kersey has just answered your prayers because he's just called timeout, which enables me to get your fat rear into the game. So he goes in, we kick the field goal, we win, and I say, thanks, you know. Sometime it just falls out of heaven. It was mentioned that I love to do a lot of things. I really do. I've always had a lot of interest, and it is fun. There's a joy of learning. And the great thing about living around a university, you got a curiosity about anything, you can satisfy it. There's an expert on everything. So I've always enjoyed sitting in on courses. I didn't take any gardening courses while I was coaching because I might not have coached very long. But I used to take some courses like leadership or military history or something that would kind of stimulate me for the next campaign. But then when I became athletic director, I had a little more time. That's when I got into that. I always took a lot of history courses and wrote some books. I've got some over there. Most of them are these children's books that is called How About Them Dogs? It's Harry Dog's journey on game day. You know, he goes to the bookstore and they say, how about them dogs? And he goes to the tailgate, how about them dogs? He goes to the dog walk, say, how about them dogs? He goes in the locker room. Well, you know what one Georgia person says to another when they see them at a game. They say, how about them dogs? Well, the response to how about them dogs is, how about them dogs? Real intelligent conversation, you see. We dogs carry on among ourselves. So I wrote this children's book. I also wrote a few other books, one the gardening book and then one a history book on the University of Georgia, which is beautifully illustrated by a guy named Steve Penley. Now, if you don't know Steve Penley as an artist, you ought to get to know him because this guy is talented. I mean, he is really, really talented. So in addition to doing that, I've been doing some consulting work at a place called Kennesaw State that's going to start a football program. I've been with them now 3 or 4 years. We've now hired a coach, a guy named Brian Bohannon, who played at Georgia, but he also coached at Georgia Tech, but he's, I think, a perfect fit, so they're going to start football. And what's happening is that there's about 40 schools in the last several years that are starting football, mostly in the South. I mean, Mercer is starting football this year. Berry College, of all things. Reinhardt College, which is amazing to me, not to mention South Alabama, Georgia State started football. Why? Because it's expensive. Well, because it gives an institution, a culture, or a brand that maybe they can't get any other way. And by what do I mean by that, by a culture? I mean a color. Red and black, Georgia. Gold and white of Georgia Tech. Or a fight song, Glory, Glory to Old Georgia. Or I'm a rambling wreck from Georgia Tech. Or a saying, how about them dogs? Or a mascot. And they're some of the most ugliest mascots I've ever seen. But we have a white pedigree bulldog, though he's got a brown spot now. We got a new dog. And sometimes he's not the most inspiring. I mean, let's be honest about it. If you go watch a game, you'll see him in the doghouse because it's air conditioned. He doesn't want to come out. Then if he comes out, he's flopped on ice like this, you know. It is not the most inspiring mascot I've ever seen. But I remember it was UGA 5, and we were getting ready to play LSU in Baton Rouge. Now, in those days, playing LSU in Baton Rouge at night is quite an experience because those Cajuns are ready. I mean, they start at 7 o'clock in the morning, so they're ready by 7 at night. So the crowd is in, the noise you can hear. I mean, I remember that game. I was walking around on my field, my stomach was turning, and the team was in the dressing room, and all of a sudden, the LSU fans jumped up and started cheering. And I looked, and out of the end zone came their mascot, Mike the Tiger, beautiful animal in a cage. Cheerleaders poked him in the ribs, stuck a mic in his mouth, and he went, "Ah!" When he did that, all the LSU fans went into exultation. I mean, it was just, boy, my stomach really started turning. And so they started rolling him up to the 50-yard line where they parked him in those days. And when he got to the 30, right in his way was UGA. Now, UGA, because earlier he was at picture-taking day, and he was out there 5 minutes posing with the team in hot August, and he went belly up. He passed out, really. In front of the whole team, he was laying there like that. So they took him to the vet and packed him in ice all night long. And the next morning, they started ringing the chapel bell, meant he made it. He made it. But it wasn't without its price because the trauma affected his hearing. He couldn't hear. And he lost, he's elevated his voice even. But he was ready for Baton Rouge. And he was sitting there when that tiger came. Well, when the tiger saw him, he got real mad and ran up to the front of the cage and let out a roar. Rawr! Well, the UGA didn't move. Of course, the tiger didn't know he was hard of hearing, you see. So that really got him mad, and he got up on his hind legs and rattled the cage, like that. Well, when he did that, UGA raised up and took 2 steps forward, and in that elevated voice went, "Urf, urf." Which time the tiger came down, went to the back of the cage, and went to the bathroom. I got so excited, I ran in the dressing room. I said, "Come on, man, we got him tonight. There's no question about it." So that gives institutions a culture, a brand, and that's why that I have enjoyed doing what I'm doing. Now, the last thing I'll tell you about, and I'm sure that'll be enough. One of the special rewards of coaching or teaching or dealing with young people in any way is to feel that in some way you've had some small part in helping them along the way. And that is a special reward. And I still have former players come back at some point in time and say 2 simple words: "Thanks, Coach." Some that are more talkative may say, "Thanks, Coach, for teaching me about discipline or how to win or how to lose or whatever it is." But as the older they get, you get that, and it's special. And all of them are special, but every once in a while there's some extraordinary ones that come along, and certainly Herschel was extraordinary, but this fellow's Billy Payne. Some of you may have heard of Billy. Billy was not a Superman on a football field, but he was a good old 60-minute football player. He was on 2 championship teams early on. He was smart, scholar athlete, went to the law school, got his law degree, came to Atlanta in real estate law and did really well. And then there was something that was churning on him. He wanted to get a special feeling or have something that would give him the satisfaction that he really enjoyed when he was playing. He did a fundraiser for his church, and they redid the sanctuary and the altar, and he had a great feeling doing that. But he wanted to try something extraordinary. So he came to me several years ago, and I never will forget it. He stuttered, and I said, "Billy, what's on your mind?" Listen, he said, "Coach, I have saved enough money that I want to volunteer my services to bring the Olympics to Atlanta, Georgia." Now, at that time, Atlanta was not known internationally as it's known today. And secondly, they just had the Olympics in Atlanta, in the United States, in Los Angeles, and they never bring it back to the same country that soon. And thirdly, this was the centennial of the Olympics, and Athens, Greece, where it all started, would certainly win it. And fourthly, no city in the history of the Olympics has ever won it on the first bid. Now, when he shared that with me, my first thought was, Billy, those old licks you took on the field, man, they have caught up with you. Now, sharing that dream with me is one thing, but you can imagine him going to Coke or Delta, sharing the dream and asking for $500,000. They say, "You are crazy." He got 5 of his well-off friends to give him $10,000 apiece, and that's what he had for Atlanta to beat out Minneapolis to have the right to be the bid city of the United States. So I was in Tokyo that night that they announced who the winner would be. And I came in and I saw Billy for the first time. His shirt was as white, his face was as white as my shirt. 3 years of all of this doing nothing. Also there was Melbourne, Australia, Manchester, England, Athens, Greece. A huge delegation of people. And I came in, I was sitting with his daughter, who was a student at Georgia, Elizabeth, and his wife, Martha, and Billy was up front. And I wanted to change places with him. I'd been in national championship games I've lost, and I just felt for him. And then Samaranch, who was the IOC president, comes out, opens the envelope, and then Martha squeezes my hand, and I'm about to melt. Samaranch, and there are some people that remember where they were that morning because it was morning here, and it was 9 o'clock at night there. And Samaranch, in that Catalan voice, says the winner of the '96 Summer Olympics is Atlanta. Well, when he said that, there was a burst of excitement and electricity, at least among the Georgia delegates, not among the others, that, I've never felt like that before, except maybe winning a national championship. And I got up and I hugged Martha, I hugged Elizabeth, I hugged Billy. I don't cry easy, I just started crying. And at that moment, Bill Hartman, sportscaster, retired, stuck a microphone and a camera in my face. And Barbara was sitting on the couch in Athens watching me cry in Tokyo. And she got mad. She said, "You didn't cry when we got married. And you didn't cry when our first baby was born, and here you are in Tokyo crying." But it was just that emotional to me. But when I left Billy's office that day, I found a little stanza of a poem that I thought would be so appropriate. And I said, if this impossible dream ever happens, I'm going to give it to Billy, which I did, and a nice plaque. And it says, "To dream anything that you want to dream, that's the beauty of the human mind." And if you think about it, you can sit there, I can stand here. There's nothing we can't dream. We can dream anything. To do anything that you want to do, if you want to do it bad enough, is the strength of the human will. And then to trust yourself to test your limits, because sometimes we reach out, don't realize we can reach out a little bit further. And I thought about Billy, to trust yourself to test your limits when he was not inspired by any reception of what his dream was. And he trusted himself to test his limit. To trust yourself to test your limit, that is the courage to succeed. So I gave that to Billy, and it's always special. And those are the things that keep me going. Now, in conclusion, I have mentioned my wife 2 or 3 times. If you see her, please tell her that I have mentioned her. And I'll mention her one last time, because in that 53 years, she has really been a strength that's helped me in some tough times. And you have them in anything, but certainly have them in football, and when you do, everybody knows about it. And we were going through the toughest year because previously we had run an offense called the Veer triple option offense. The quarterback has 3 options. Take the ball, give it to the dive back. Second option, fake it to the dive and then keep it. Third option, fake the dive, fake the keep, pitch it out to the trail man. Triple option, we did it so well. In the mid-'70s, we were among the top 5 scoring teams in the country. Now, the following year, we added to the triple option the 4th option, which is to drop it on the ground, and it's anybody's option to get it, you see? Now, we executed the quadruple option so well, we broke a Georgia fumble record by 18. Yeah, we only missed the national fumble record by 2. Had we gone to a bowl game that year, we would still be holding the national fumble record. But I remember coming home, and when you go through a year like that, there's no fun. I mean, you just feel awful. So as soon as I came in on Thursday, still with a chance to break the national fumble record, we still had Tech to play, she runs out, said, Vincent, I just heard the cutest play we got to put in. I said, Barbara, I'm in no mood for any cute plays. Oh, she said, I'm serious, we need to put this in. I said, what are you talking about? She said, well, when the offensive team breaks the huddle, have the offensive linemen come up and line up with their tails facing the defense, so that when we fumble, they'll be in better position to recover the fumble, you see. So it's that kind of inspiration that has kept me going all of these many years. And it's been inspiring to have an opportunity to visit with you. Chick-fil-A. Go Chick-fil-A. Go Dogs, and God bless.